All right, continuing on with chapter 15, starting on page 414. All right, you need to know the stages of water treatment, and it's not really in your book, but the AP test has asked it before in a lot of different ways, multiple choice and an FRQ. So you need to know it. So number one, in the stages of water treatment, and for us this occurs a lot. Most of our water is treated up above Central Park at the Castaic Lake Water Agency. And the first thing that's happened is the water from Castaic Lake comes over through pipes and is pumped through screens to remove large debris like plastic bags or leaves or sticks or dead fish or whatever. Second step is flocculation. Now this is optional. We don't use it here because our water is not muddy, but in places that, like the Mississippi's muddy, and so if a town uses Mississippi River water, they have to do flocculation, and basically they use a precipitate to precipitate out the mud from the water. And some of the precipitates are aluminum hydroxide. Okay, the third thing that we do is we zap it to kill bacteria. Now we used to just chlorinate it, but we found out a couple of decades ago that there is a bacteria that resists chlorine called Cryptosporidium. And so we have to now use ozone or UV light to kill not just crypto, but all the bacteria. Okay, then all that dead bacteria and any other organic matter is filtered through sand and gravel in a sedimentation basin. And this removes the dead bacteria. And we call this dead bacteria sludge. And we send the sludge to farms as fertilizer. And then we store it until we need it. So the Castaic Lake Water Agency has these big pools of cleaned up water that they store, and then when it's needed they send it in pipes to your house, and they add a little bit of chlorine, not very much, not like a pool, not like a swimming pool, but a little bit of chlorine just to kill any bacteria that might be in the pipes between the water treatment plant and your home. So I know this is a lot to memorize, but it's really important to do that. You have to know all of the steps. You have to know the names of them, like sedimentation basin. You need to know the sludge. You need to know it's zapped with ozone and UV light. So do make sure you memorize them. The other thing that you have to do is memorize wastewater. Okay, so water treatment is a little bit more simple than wastewater treatment, because wastewater is treating sewer water. So it has to go through more stages. You have to memorize the difference. You have to memorize the stages in water treatment, and then over here, now in this one we have a picture. These are the stages of wastewater treatment. Okay, so I didn't write it all out because your book actually has the stages written for you. So number one here is very similar to water treatment. You have screens to remove solid objects, including things like toilet paper. And then the second thing is you have a clarifier that removes oils, greases, and solids from things like cooking. And then you have an aeration basin. So basically you bubble in oxygen to speed up decomposers to work to digest it. Okay, so we add bacteria in here, microbes. They consume organic matter. And basically the bacteria digest all of the organic matter from our wastewater. That includes feces and urine and anything else that goes down a drain. And again, we bubble it. We add oxygen, so it's all bubbly here, because it makes the bacteria decompose faster. The more oxygen that's in there, the faster it goes. The next thing that happens, sometimes we have a secondary clarifier to again remove more oils, grease, and solids. And then we have here, number 5, we have a filtering and disinfection basin. So the water is filtered with sand and disinfected before it is then either, we call it effluent, so know this word actually, effluent. It's discharged into some sort of waterway. If you're near the ocean, it goes to the ocean. If you're a river, it goes in a river or a lake or lake. For us in Santa Clarita, we dump it into the Santa Clara River, where it's then used again. Okay, so we actually have to do something else. So because we add chlorine to it, because we dump it into a river, we have to then deactivate the chlorine. So we add a little chlorine to kill any remaining bacteria, and then we have to put it, we have to add a chemical to neutralize the chlorine because we don't want to kill the fish in our river as we dump our clean wastewater into the river. And so this is when we're talking about reclaimed water. At this point, it's reclaimed. It's almost, well, it's pretty much clean enough to drink. But people don't really want to drink it from this point. So we use it for landscaping or golf courses, or in our case, we put it in the river for the farmers to use. LA City dumps most of it into the ocean, which is a terrible waste of cleaned up water. Millions and millions of gallons of cleaned up water get dumped into the ocean. And so people are looking at that going, that is not a smart long-term use of our water. And so this is where people are starting to think, should we then take this water and use it in other places? And so Orange County's doing that. They're taking this water and it doesn't go to the ocean anymore. They pump it underground into aquifers. Then they pump it out and they send it through this treatment again. But actually, Orange County, they go through 7 stages. We go through like 5 stages here. They go through 7. So they do extra before it goes into the groundwater. And then they pump it back up, clean it again. And so again, it's some of the most pure water around. Even though a lot of people like to call it toilet to tap, it's really pure. Okay, so all right, primary treatment is just these 2 steps. That's it. That's all that's involved. And 11% of the United States just does that. They just get rid of the solids, sends them to the landfill, and then the oils and greases. That's it. And it's kind of gross. And then they just dump it into a body of water. But most of the U.S. does all the way through number 4, which we call 1 and 2 primary, 3 and 4 secondary treatment. And this includes LA City with an enormous wastewater treatment plant called Hyperion. And because it's going into the ocean, they just stop here. Because our water in Santa Clarita goes into a river that's a very important riparian ecosystem, we do this. Okay, so we do number 5, which is called tertiary treatment. And that is, again, because we need our water to be extra clean because it's going into an important river ecosystem. So again, primary is 1 and 2. Secondary is, well, 1 through 4 technically. And then tertiary, you add number 5. All right, some places, instead of building a wastewater treatment plant, you have these little towns that actually have built a wetland. Up in Northern California, Arcata is a town that decided it was cheaper to restore a wetland and flush its wastewater through the wetland to treat it. And it works. The wetlands, the bacteria and the plants in there actually, they measure it all the time. They measure the water going in and the water coming out of the wetland before it gets to the ocean. And it is just as clean as a wastewater treatment plant. And then you've restored a wetland for habitat, wildlife, walking trails, recreation, and it was cheaper than building a plant. So smaller towns can do this. Big cities can't. They don't have the amount of land needed to build a wetlands, but a town of, you know, just a few thousand people could do this. All right, so let's say you live out in a rural area like Agua Dulce and you don't have sewer pipes that go to a city's wastewater treatment plant. So you use a septic tank. And so you have this tank in your yard or buried, and it uses bacteria to decompose the waste, and then it kind of cleans up the waste in this little tank. Well, it's kind of a big tank. And then underground it will dispose of a lot of the water. You need to know what sludge is. Sometimes sludge is called a biosolid, and it is solid material removed from wastewater. So the bacteria digest the organic matter in the wastewater, and then it's removed, and it's pressed into these fertilizer cakes called sludge cakes. And then we send it to farms as fertilizer. Okay, so water treatment uses sludge too, and that can go to any farm. But wastewater treatment sludge cannot go for food crops. So in California, we will send our wastewater sludge to like cotton fields and farmers that are growing food for animals, not for humans. All right, so you need to know this. These are some add-ons to the chapter. Human sewage has large amounts of phosphorus in it. So just in general, our wastewater, lots of phosphorus. Human waste does. And this is a huge source of eutrophication in water bodies. And so part of the wastewater treatment plants need to remove phosphorus. The other thing you need to know about is storm drains. And so when it rains and it goes down into the street, it drains into storm drains. And these flow directly into the river or an ocean with trash, bacteria, toxins, etc. We don't treat it, and this is a serious issue. That's why around town we have little things painted above a storm drain that says don't dump into the storm drain because it goes to the river. And so this is a concern because after it rains in California is not a good time to go to the beach because all of the stuff from the storm drains go to the ocean and it is nasty. So first of all, why do we send all our rainwater and storm drains to the ocean? Why are we wasting all of that water when it does rain? We get an El Nino year, rains a ton. Why is all that water going to the ocean? These are questions that people are asking in Southern California. It's foolishness. So first of all, we should be collecting all that water from our storm drains. And secondly, we need to be cleaning it up. So these are some really interesting issues that I think that these problems will be addressed in the near future in Southern California. And that's the end for chapter 14.